An old hag making a 5-figure salary? Lana's words prompted Hector to also chime in, sounding delighted.
Does that mean you've got a 6-figure savings?
My eldest son and his wife, peering over my PC screen, exaggeratedly rejoiced at what they saw. I felt uneasy about their attitude. Fortunately, what they saw was just a number without a name attached, so I quickly fibbed. I earned $300, and my savings are just $3,000. Upon hearing this, the expressions of my eldest son and his wife dropped, and they turned to look at me. It seems they're still somewhat in doubt. I kept up the charade desperately. The stuff you saw earlier, that's just an example of a successful person. Amazing, isn't it? My words, clumsily trying to cover up, clearly disappointed my eldest son and his wife. The next day, they said something shocking.
Mom, can you leave this house?
We don't want an old hag leeching off us here. Their words made me resolve to cut ties with my eldest son and his wife. I pretended to be downtrodden. Lana looked over with a mean smirk. Just you wait, I thought to myself as I packed. I had already decided where to go. Pretending to be upset to the very end, I gathered my bare essentials. Thank you for everything. With a sigh to my eldest son and his wife, who didn't even bother to see me off, I left my home. My name is Rachel Rattledge. Just turned 75 last month. I worked in the editing business until retirement age, living modestly on my pension and retirement funds since. My husband passed away 5 years ago. He was involved in a rear-end collision on the highway. The memory still pains me, bringing tears on many days, but recently I've started to look forward a bit more. We had 2 children. My eldest daughter, now 35, is married and lives with her husband's family. The in-laws are kind, and she has a good life with her grandchildren. My second child, Hector, my eldest son, was born when I was 45. We considered having only one child since I was already 40 when my daughter was born, but my husband and I both had incomes and wanted more than one child, being only children ourselves. So Hector was conceived after fertility treatments. Hector married a year before my husband passed away. His wife, Lana, is a bit vain but takes initiative in family events. Their daughter, Mona, born just before my husband's death, is now 5. They moved into my house 6 months ago at Lana's insistence, and I, living alone, happily agreed. I thought living out my days with my grandchild would be a joy. I thought so, but reality wasn't so sweet. After Hector's family moved in, the house became lively, which I loved, but utility bills and food expenses more than doubled. Yet there was no talk of them contributing to living expenses for my eldest son and his wife. Moreover, housework, which was supposed to be shared, was mostly ignored by Lana. Occasionally she cooked, but often it was for taking to friends' houses, using ingredients I had bought. For the first 2 months, the joy of living with Mona outweighed my concerns. But the strain of daily chores and playing with Mona started to weigh on me, an elderly woman. More importantly, my retirement funds were dwindling due to the family's expenses. Reluctantly, I decided it was important to speak honestly and approached my eldest son and his wife. Hey, you've been living here for a half a year now. I hate to ask, but can you contribute a bit to the living expenses? Food and utility bills have more than doubled. As I said this, my eldest son and his wife looked at each other and then burst into laughter. Confused, I just tilted my head. Then, Lana, laughing and holding her stomach, replied, Rachel, you're always joking. Asking for living expenses while we're graciously living with you? What kind of wicked mother-in-law are you? Nobody does that these days. No, I'm not joking. As I denied Lana's words, the expressions vanished from the faces of my eldest son and his wife. Then, with a blank expression, Hector quietly said to me,
Mom, are you trying to mooch off your son?
I was so shocked that I couldn't immediately respond. I wasn't mooching. I was just asking for a little help with living expenses. Besides, they both have dual incomes. Lana works part-time, but Hector is a full-time employee at a large corporation. They can't be short of money, yet they acted as if I was the villain for asking. Rachel, I can't believe it. We're working hard for Mona's sake, and you're asking for our money?
I never thought you'd be such a money-grubbing mother.
Their harsh words almost brought me to tears, but I couldn't back down now. I persisted and finally got them to agree to contribute $500 a month. It's nowhere near enough to cover the increased expenses, but I decided to be grateful for anything. Since then, Lana has repeatedly called me wicked. Hector doesn't stop her and even joins in. The only consolation is that they don't do it in front of Mona. Perhaps because I've often looked after her, Mona is very attached to me. Even my eldest son and his wife can't speak ill of me in front of their dear daughter. Lana's part-time job, initially only in the mornings, gradually became full day, and now she's out all day. The job is child-friendly, so when I absolutely can't watch Mona, Lana reluctantly takes her along. Mona attends a nearby prestigious preschool, famous for its enriching experiences, but also for its substantial monthly fees. Shockingly, I was the one who ended up paying those fees. It started when Lana tearfully told me she couldn't afford the high cost 1 month. What was supposed to be a one-time thing became a regular expectation. So my savings dwindled. Then I received an offer from my former company to work as a web writer. They wanted me to write a column from an editor's perspective, offering a stipend plus incentives. It was a great opportunity, and I could work from home, allowing me to manage Mona's pickups and household chores. I decided to give it a try, and it turned out to be a huge success. My columns became increasingly popular, leading to various job offers and higher rates per project. After half a year, I was earning more than an average full-time salary. Busy as I was, writing again and receiving appreciation for my work filled me with joy, and I immersed myself in it. However, I kept my job a secret from my eldest son and his wife. Sometimes when deadlines loomed and housework fell behind, they made snide remarks, but they never questioned why, which worked in my favor. A year into web writing, my monthly income exceeded 5 figures. When I hit a record $18,400 one month, my face broke into a smile in front of my computer screen. If things continued like this, my future options would certainly expand. While I was pondering this alone, a voice came from behind me. Hey Rachel, what's that? You working from home? I gasped and turned around. There stood Lana. As soon as she saw my screen, her face lit up and she called Hector over. When Hector arrived, she pointed at my screen and exclaimed excitedly, An old hag making a 5-figure salary? Lana's words prompted Hector to also chime in, sounding delighted.
Does that mean you've got a 6-figure savings?
My eldest son and his wife, peering over my PC screen, exaggeratedly rejoiced at what they saw. I felt uneasy about their attitude. Fortunately, what they saw was just a number without a name attached, so I quickly fibbed. I earned $300, and my savings are just $3,000. Upon hearing this, the expressions of my eldest son and his wife dropped, and they turned to look at me. It seems they're still somewhat in doubt. I kept up the charade desperately. The stuff you saw earlier? That's just an example of a successful person. Amazing, isn't it? My words, clumsily trying to cover up, clearly disappointed my eldest son and his wife. The next day, they said something shocking.
Mom, can you leave this house?
We don't want an old hag leeching off us here. Their words made me resolve to cut ties with my eldest son and his wife. As I pretended to be downtrodden, Lana looked over with a mean smirk. Just you wait, I thought to myself as I packed. I had already decided where to go. Pretending to be upset to the very end, I gathered my bare essentials. Thank you for everything. With a sigh to my eldest son and his wife, who didn't even bother to see me off, I left my home. I immediately moved to a nearby hotel. The next day, I visited my childhood home. My cousin was living there with her daughter and granddaughter, having become a single mother. I had asked my cousin to look after the house, which once belonged to my parents, as a place for her and her daughter to live. My cousin's family warmly welcomed me. I decided to plan my next steps there. When all my plans were in place, my eldest son and his wife came to visit. Apparently, they found me by following a Christmas card in Hector's memory. Despite having treated me so poorly, Lana was suddenly acting submissive upon seeing me. "Rachel, how are you? We were worried when you left so suddenly." "Oh, but you were the ones who told me to leave, weren't you?" They probably didn't expect to be confronted in front of Mona. Lana's smile twitched as if struggling to stay in place. I stood in the entrance, blocking them from entering the house. At first, Lana and Hector were taken aback, but soon they became assertive.
Mom, you've cooled off by now, right? We're not mad. Come back.
"Yeah, Rachel, we're family, aren't we?" I couldn't help but laugh at my eldest son and his wife's insincerity. They watched me with strained smiles as I laughed. After I had my fill of laughter, I replied, "Hector, I'm not interested in whether you're angry or not. I've decided to live here now. I won't be returning there anymore."
What? Mom, that's harsh. We can't make it without you. Mona is missing you too. Stop being stubborn and come back.
Hector's words made me imagine the current state of my home. Knowing Lana, she's probably not doing any cleaning. The house must be in disarray, unfit for inviting anyone over. It's an old house, so there must be bugs too. And Lana's cooking is terrible. In other words, their request for me to return probably means, "Come back and do the housework." I refuse. I'm going to enjoy my retirement. "What? How dare you?" Lana's indignant response only made me laugh. I pointed to her brand new designer bag. "You spend all your money on flashy things like that. No wonder you can't afford living expenses. Without me, you must be struggling to afford such luxury, right?" My words hit the mark, and the eldest son and his wife trembled, unable to retort. But they still didn't seem to be giving up. Reluctantly, I pulled out 2 photos I had brought from the room. Seeing them, my eldest son and his wife turned pale. "What? Why does Rachel have these?" They were evidence of their infidelities, discovered during my investigation. Lana was arm in arm with an unknown man entering his house, and Hector was entering a hotel with a young woman. Both photos clearly showed their companions' faces.
You? You were cheating? And with my colleague?
"You were cheating too. That girl, isn't she from my workplace?" Turns out both of them were having affairs with someone from their respective workplaces. When I discovered this during the investigation, it gave me a headache. It was as if they were asking to be caught. I held the photos between my fingers, shaking them slightly as I laughed. Affairs with colleagues, how impressive. Or rather, being so engrossed with someone else when you're married is just low. My words made the eldest son and his wife shudder. They seemed to be aware that they had done something wrong. I handed them the photos as a parting gift. Their expressions were a mix of emotions. Then I decided to give them another surprise. "Actually, I've invited some people over today."
"Some people?"
As Hector tilted his head in confusion, I exaggeratedly called out over the fence, "Burke, Agnes, please come over." "Dad? Mom?" Lana's shocked voice echoed in front of the house. I barely held back my laughter as I guided Lana's parents to stand beside me. Lana's parents looked stiff, their faces beyond pale. I've explained the whole situation to Lana's parents.
"Lana, what have you done? Disrespecting your husband's mother, and even driving her out of her own house? And an affair, too. Shame on you."
Lana recoiled at her father Burke's furious outburst. I only let Mona enter the house. I didn't want to expose her to any more adult conflicts. "It's not like that, Dad. She said she would give us the house."
"What do you mean? It's not like that. You don't refer to your mother-in-law as this person in normal circumstances."
Beside the enraged Burke, Lana's mother Agnes stood with an expressionless face. She must be extremely upset. Despite her expressionless face, Agnes's clenched fists were shaking with tension. Lana, oblivious to her mother's state, sought help. "Mom, you understand, right? I haven't done anything wrong. It's all a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding? Indeed, we misunderstood you. We knew we spoiled our only daughter. But we thought we had instilled enough education in you not to be an embarrassment in public. But it seems we were mistaken. A child who can cause trouble for others without remorse." Agnes said this and glared sharply at Lana. Lana let out a small scream and stepped back. Then Agnes raised her voice. "I'll correct your rotten attitudes, both of you. You're moving in with us. Don't think it'll be easy." "Huh?" Hector shrieked at Agnes's ferocity, and for good reason. Agnes is actually a judo teacher, so living with her meant mandatory participation in judo practice. Lana had once said she left home right after getting a job because she disliked it. Caught off guard by these developments, the eldest son and his wife stood dumbfounded. Then I decided to reveal the truth. "By the way, the income you saw on my screen before kicking me out, that's actually mine." "What?" Lana looked at me, more shocked than ever. I almost laughed, but managed to hold it back. Hector looked doubtful, then half smiled. "Mom, are you just being a sore loser now? You said you had no income, right? And there wasn't much left in the bank book either." I didn't know when they had seen my bank book, but Hector said this with a smug look. I sighed exaggeratedly and gave them my response. "Obviously, I wouldn't keep a large sum where you can find it. It's obvious you'd try to take it." "What? Then where is it?" Hector raised his voice, and I showed him my mobile phone screen. It displayed my online banking account. "See my online bank? It says deposit here. My income is now over 5 times what Hector makes." Hector was speechless. But Lana, who had been stunned, quickly thought of something and began apologizing to me with a sly smile. "Rachel, I'm sorry for everything. I realize now that we've been able to live thanks to you. So why don't we go back to that house and live as a family?" Hector, regaining his senses, joined in the apology. But I couldn't accept such an insincere, money-driven apology. I was about to point this out when a voice came from behind me. "Dad, Mom, please don't bully Grandma anymore." I turned to see Mona, her face red and tears in her eyes, standing behind me. She was bravely expressing her anger in her small body, and my eldest son and his wife were shocked, but quickly began to argue. "That's not it, Mona. We're just asking Grandma to help us because she has a lot of money. For your sake." "Yeah, Mona. Didn't you say you wanted a piano? Grandma's going to buy you a big one." I sighed at my eldest son and his wife's selfish reasoning. They thought they had fooled Mona, but it clearly hadn't worked. "I don't want a piano," Mona screamed, her voice breaking into sobs. "Dad and Mom, you always received kindness from Grandma, but all you do is badmouth her. My teacher said that people who constantly speak ill of others go to hell. Do you want to go to hell, Dad and Mom? I don't. I want all the people I love to go to heaven." Lana broke down crying at Mona's words, and Hector awkwardly turned his face away. I hugged Mona and reassured her. "It's okay, Mona. When Dad and Mom live with their grandparents, they'll become good people and go to heaven." Agnes nodded at my words. Mona, smiling broadly at this, left the entrance, took her parents' hands, and went back to Lana's parents' house. Later on, Lana's family moved into her parents' house. Both were being trained daily at the practice ground, correcting their lifestyle habits and fickle hearts. Hector, who was not fond of physical exercise, was getting thoroughly trained, often coming home with bruises. Mona, who had always wanted to learn judo, seemed to be enjoying it every day. On the day of their move, Agnes sold all the luxury bags and other items, using the money for living expenses, and planned to split any further costs equally. The living expenses I had been paying were being deducted from the money they owed, and paid into Lana's parents' household fund each month. I didn't need the money, so I decided to save it all for Mona's use. After that, I sold my house and moved back to my childhood home. My cousin and her daughter and granddaughter welcomed me warmly, and I'm enjoying a comfortable life. I also hired my cousin's daughter as a housekeeper, paying her a salary to take care of everything at home, so she could spend more time with her child. Mona now visits my house about twice a month. We see each other less frequently than when we lived together, but she's still my dear beloved only grandchild. She has a judo competition coming up and asked me to come watch, which I plan to do. Luckily, my work can be done anywhere as long as I have my PC. Right now, Mona and I are also planning to go on a long vacation together. I want to fully enjoy and make the most of the things I love and the life ahead of me.